Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Allegiance Group and Pursuant or AGP webinar. We're excited to be discussing the topic of how you can optimize your website to engage and convert new donors. We know donor acquisition and donor conversion is a really timely topic at this time, so we're really excited to have everyone join us today. We've got a great panel of speakers who are going to be walking us through some of the quick wins that you can implement to get your website where it needs to be. All right, before we get started, I've got a couple of housekeeping notes for you. So we are recording today's webinar. If you have to drop early or, if you had a friend who can only join partway through, no worries. We're going to be recording the entirety of today's presentation and it will be shared with you in your inbox tomorrow. You can also interact with us a couple of ways. You can interact by asking a direct question using the Q&A option in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. We also have the chat enabled in this chat today, or in this webinar today. So if there's any comments or observations or other ways that you would like to interact with us today, if you want to, for example, put in where you're joining us from today, we always like to see a lively discussion happening in the chat. It always makes things a little bit more interesting. And then, but moving on, let's get into today's presentation and introduce today's speakers.
Hi, oh, sorry, go ahead, Leah.
You take it away, TJ.
Hi, I'm TJ Peeler. I'm the Director of User Experience in the agency, and I am so excited to be joined here by my colleagues, Ashley and Joe, who have been two of the people that I've been learning a lot from on my fundraising journey as I've started, working in the fundraising work with AGP over 8, 9 years ago. Ashley?
I'm Ashley Lambert. I'm the Vice President of Client Strategy, and I lead the team that are building the client solutions for our fundraising and marketing programs. So I collaborate a lot with TJ regarding our web work and Joe for our analytics.
Hey all, Joe McLaughlin. I'm the VP of Analytics and Optimization. So I head up our analytics team who kind of works on all things data and reporting related, but as it pertains most specifically to our topics today, also on things like conversion optimization, website optimization, all those kind of fun things. So a lot of overlap between the stuff that I'm working on and working with TJ and Ashley, which is always great.
All right, so before we get started, I have what does this image look like? This is like a Rorschach test quiz. Is this a piece of yarn? Is it my toddler's fridge art? Is it your route driving through a busy Costco parking lot? It is your donor journey. It is messy. It's not a straight line like we want it to be as marketers, and we need a framework that can help us bring a little bit more order to it. So when we think about the user journey, we want to think about the user journey like a funnel. This is the donor intent funnel, and this can help you bring a little bit more order to that chaos of the user journey. The user journey is never going to be a completely straight line, but we want to think about how we're moving people from one phase to another phase. So today we're going to be talking about tips that apply to different phases of this funnel and how you can use those to optimize your website for new donors. So before we get started, I just want to have a few sort of principles that underline the work that we're doing. One thing is we're talking about websites today. So your website is really a communication tool. It's part of your marketing arsenal that gives you more real estate to share information than other channels. And one thing that's hard for us marketers about websites is that on websites, everyone is anonymous. Donors are in different phases. People are coming in with different needs. So we have to make sure that we're enabling pathways for that and that we're connecting what people want with what we want to motivate them to do or what we want them to make sure that they know about us, our organization. Oh, I didn't realize I had an animation here. Okay, just gonna get that all in here. So some of this donor funnel experience movement is happening across different channels. So I just want to make sure that we are, saying out loud that we're talking about the website as a channel on today's call, but a lot of this work can be applied across different channels, and a lot of this journey is happening on multiple channels. So for the purpose of today's talk, as Joe and Ashley and I were prepping for this talk, we realized we had so much content to talk about, and we had to narrow down to something we could actually talk about in 30 to 45 minutes. So for today, we're going to assume that we have already acquired the traffic and that we have potential donors coming to the website. And so what are we going to do with them once we've gotten people to the website? We're going to talk about, how we're sort of using this funnel to make sense of that chaotic user journey and how we're blending what the audience wants with what we want to do so that they can progress in their relationship with the organization in a way that feels authentic and pushes people through this funnel. So today we're going to talk about 8 quick wins. And before we get started, I have one more thing I want to talk about, which is some sort of longer term work and pillars that underline the quick wins. So we'll talk about quick wins today, but there are a few things that would make the quick wins more effective if you do them. These are longer term things to do or tenets that sort of underline the quick wins that we're going to talk about. So in order to create that authentic and personal experience that deepens someone's relationship with your organization, it's really critical to understand who your audience is, what they want, and what motivates them to give. You can be attracting the wrong audience, and that is a waste of your time and money. And so we love doing market research to identify the right audience and what issues motivate them to donate, and audience research to understand what are they coming to you for? What is their interest in you as an organization? And then we want to think about using that market research and that audience research to create a donor-centered experience. So not one that's talking about the organization does this, the organization does that, the organization does that, but how can you put the potential donor coming to you as part of the change that you're trying to make? And then the other thing, we were just talking about channels on the previous slide, creating a consistent digital experience through those channels, no matter what channel someone is coming to you on, is really important for that relationship with the organization. And that usually, that's hard for every organization. It's hard for us too. And it's something that requires working through your silos, making sure that development is aligned with IT and is aligned with marketing and comms. So, that's something that every organization struggles with. All right, now I'm going to pass it off to Ashley. Let's get into that funnel.
Okay. We're gonna start at the top where the awareness is. And I want to talk first about, that's okay, you can go to the next slide. I want to talk first about short form content. So when we're thinking about the website or just marketing in general, no matter what audience you're trying to reach, when you're working through the type of content you're going to create, sort of the short form content and there's long form content. The short form content is going to be one of the things that you can leverage more quickly. So this is intended for a broad reach. It's supposed to be engaging. It should capture attention quite quickly. And these are the types of things that you might initially think you would be sharing out during that acquisition timeframe, like it's on social media, etc. But it doesn't always have to be. So we're going to start at the top of the funnel, but we're going to talk through some of these examples and review how they can be used at different points through the funnel. But the biggest characteristics I want you to take away from this is that it's really supposed to boost your brand visibility, create engagement, be authentic, be shareable, and hopefully be something that you can repurpose. If you take nothing else away, just think about the fact that you shouldn't have to struggle to create all of these things. The idea is that your organization has the content already, probably, whether you're writing articles for your website or there's press releases or somebody's doing research or you have people in the field, right? There's stuff there and you need to take it and harness it. So you can bring up the examples. So this example is from one of our clients, Rails to Trails. And so I'm just showing you a couple of different mediums. Basically, they created numerous videos around sharing the trail, and it's basically tips, but they leverage that content in multiple ways. So they have the videos on YouTube. They also created little snippets of the videos. They put them on the website, and then they did create longer form content around that. But what this does is, of course, if someone really is coming in through the top of the funnel, they're searching potentially for information. They land maybe in YouTube, they see it, they could click through, and then they're seeing content on the website that is consistent and repurposable. I think there's another screenshot there. Yeah, that was just a closer view of the video. But you can see there's a little blur below it. So, it's long, it's within a page that has more content, but it's not paragraphs and paragraphs of content. It can be shortened. You can go to the next slide. Okay. So as I was saying, some of those examples, so what you saw there was video, but articles, blog posts, little snippets, testimonials, infographics. We love things like polls and quizzes, and those are certainly items that can be shared in your website, which we're talking about today, but through email, through social, etc. The example at the top is from our client, Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and they developed this quiz around oysters. So oysters is a really popular content topic for them. People love it. And they created this quiz and
Ashley is calling in remotely from Bosnia, so I'm gonna step in until she comes back. Oh, she's back. Okay.
okay, I am froze. Great.
You're
Sorry
back.
about that. Yeah, okay. What I was saying was the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the oyster content topic is really popular. So they harnessed that. They decided to create short form content around it. They have a quiz, and this quiz is honestly something they've been leveraging for years. So they feature it in the website, and it's something that's across different sections, but they also, of course, have it within their oyster content section. And then the bottom screenshot is from another client, Pathfinder, and this is an interactive map. And so when you click into it, it's really providing more education around the locations that they're working in and some of that information. Then you can click through and read more detail. But the idea is that they have this content feature within multiple pages of their website, right? So it's not just the homepage, which it certainly is, but you can leverage it in different sections and provide that more detailed information for them. And what this is doing is it's creating that credibility. And while this feels more intensive because it is quite interactive, you don't necessarily have to build something as sophisticated as this, but it's something that could be repurposed across all different kinds of content areas, specifically encompassing the work that you're doing.
Oh, I messed up my slides here. Hold on. Okay. Middle of funnel.
Okay, middle of funnel. Okay, great. All right, so now that someone has interacted with some of that content, they land within your pages, they're probably looking for more detailed information. So they saw that interactive map or they took that quiz or whatever it is. We now want to continue weaving that messaging. So as TJ was talking about the fact that the content and the topics and the messaging and what you're putting forward to put your best foot forward, should be similar and weave throughout all of the work that you're doing. So this is what we're trying to talk about, is making it contextual and making it relevant. So that's really going to be moving the user from the consideration to the conversion, somewhere in that vein of work. But you're trying to convince them that you're the best option, right? So one of the examples I'm showing here is a donate ask. It's not an embedded form, but it's still a contextual ask. So this was actually within the AIDS education page. And so instead of this being generic, it's really talking more specifically about the work that they're doing, call to action to donate, so that when someone's reading that content, they're seeing it and the connection is being made. You could have a generic ask there, but what that tends to feel like, I think, when organizations do that is that it's just an ask that you're slapping in every page in every area. And the last thing you want someone to do is hit something in your website and pause and sort of break that connection on that seamless reading or interaction of what they're doing. All right, so what I showed you before was donation form. Certainly email sign up is the next step also. But again, we want to make this contextual as possible. And, usually these types of calls to action may exist near the footer of a website, which could be generic. But if you have the opportunity to make it contextual within a certain page and talk specifically about the value add of someone signing up for the content, this is an example from Rain, and at least telling the user what kind of information they're going to receive from you, talking about more specifically about some of the work that you do. So Water for People is another client, and they're just talking more specifically around the women that they're helping, And again, this was contextual within a content page about women. This example is from Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I want to feature the oysters again. And this is email sign up, but it's done in a different way. There's a carousel and then they're actually taking you to a pledge. I know for some of our fundraising teams that aren't necessarily doing hard advocacy, will use these types of vehicles to acquire emails. But the fact that they're putting all of that context into the same section around the oysters is again, just moving someone through that content topic. And then this is another example. This is from NRDC. And I think the language that they're putting around these is really talking about, join us, join this work. Here are the ways you can help XYZ topic. I would say the RAIN one and the NRDC are a little bit more generic, but it's still giving the value proposition of why you should be signing up to continue getting information from the organization. But whatever specifics you can put there to relate it to the information is going to be more valuable for you. Okay, this is one of my favorite examples. Okay, so this is also email sign up, but not in a generic way. But again, this is what we would call gated content. So this piece of content specifically is longer form, but it's something that people will really want. So when you're making content that is of value, of course, that is going to be something that a person would be more likely to give up their information for. So this is an example, and they're only asking for the minimum amount of fields that they think someone will want to give to them. They're providing content that is very helpful for families and individuals who have food allergies. And it's the kind of thing that they could leverage in acquisition, even though that's not what we're talking about today, but within the website, that if someone happens to come in because that's what they're specifically looking for, or they happen to be on another page and land here, or navigate through the pathways, that they would be interested in downloading this. So I think gated content definitely has a place, but it depends on how valuable a person thinks that content is as to whether they're really willing to give up that personal information.
Yeah, that's a great point about the cost benefit analysis that people calculate in their head before they give up something, give up their email address. All right, so we're down to the bottom of the funnel already. So one thing that's really important, we know that, if your website is not a vehicle for serving constituents who are in a moment of crisis, like food banks and hospitals, then we know that when people come to your homepage, they have more of an intent to give than if they enter on deeper content pages. They enter on deeper content pages, they're there from an informational, query, an informational search on Google. If they come directly to your homepage, they know you as an organization. So they're already further along in that funnel. So most of your traffic actually does enter on deeper content pages. A smaller percentage of your traffic is entering on your homepage. It's the front door of your house, but most people will come in through that side door. So if people do enter on your homepage, come to your homepage, we want them to know who you are, what you do, why you matter, and we want to make sure it is a donation-focused experience. You're seeing a lot of examples. Organizations need to have a donation call to action in the hero of their homepage. I'm just going to add on here my little side note, or my caveat is, if you are not directly serving constituents in a moment of crisis. So look at all these examples, all these good people, good organizations with their donation call to action, embedded donation forms sometimes, but at least a donation button and a reason to give in their hero. Who's doing this one? I can't remember.
That's me. That's me. I was just
Okay.
giving them the millennial pause. So we talked about, I showed you that example before of the donation form that really just had like the words, the contextual word, but these are, versions of embedded forms, which if you can that have some sort of embedded starter form, that is going to just even get you one step further ahead in someone actually then making that gift. But again, like the oysters, they're everywhere, but we love them. And the idea again is that someone was probably coming through a content journey, and we want to be able to make this relevant. So even if they're not ready to give, they're just seeing that same creative. I feel like I keep saying that message over and over, but anything that can have the very strong call to action, but the reasoning and the impact behind it, as well as then those actual giving buttons. And if you don't have the technology to do this, then that other version I showed you is a good option as well. You can go. I'm good.
Sorry, not trying to rush you.
Okay.
All right, Joe, talk to us
All
about
right.
donation forms.
Yes. So now you've done all the hard work, right, of identifying your target audiences, getting them to your website, getting them engaged with your content, kind of move them all the way through the various stages of the funnel that we've talked about, gotten them to a donation page. Do not let your donation form be the thing that turns them off from giving, right? Usability and technical issues and things along those lines, they can be a huge roadblock to donors that can really make all of that hard work that you've done just to get them to this point for naught, right? The good news, though, is that because your donation forms and your website are basically always on, right? They're a tool that can be accessed by supporters at any point in that squiggly donor journey that TJ shared, right? If you have a well-optimized donation form, it's going to help you both from a donor acquisition standpoint, it's going to help you from a donor engagement standpoint, a donor cultivation, retention, all of those numbers will boost over time, and kind of help you at every stage of that donor life cycle. But so first and foremost, when people are hitting your donation page, you want to make sure you're not turning them off, right? From completing that donation. So my pro tip on that front is to occasionally have a friend or a family member or somebody who's not enmeshed in the day-to-day of working with your website and all these kinds of things, go through the process and just ask them to make a $5 gift, or ask them to go to the website and make a monthly donation, and just watch how they do it and see, get some feedback from them afterwards. Was it quick? Did you have, were there any fields that seemed weird? Did they have any problems clicking on buttons? Any of these kinds of things. So these kind of like focus group of one, engagements can really be super helpful in identifying some of these like user experience and technical issues that can be impacting your broader donor base, and you don't necessarily always know about it. In terms of really like how to remove friction, right, and really make it easy, we've kind of broken things up into what we consider low-hanging fruit and then some more like medium-hanging fruit, right? The good news is the low-hanging fruit is there's a lot of like fairly easy steps that can be taken to really optimize your donation page. One being, don't ask for more information than you absolutely need to process a donation, right? Your gift processing software will tell you need first name, last name, email, blah, blah. They'll give you a concrete list. Don't start layering on more things that you want to capture unless you have a well-defined strategy for how to use that information after the fact, right? We've run into this a lot with either in our past lives working with other organizations or working with clients where they say, oh, I'd really like to gather this piece of information. And when you scratch a little bit deeper, they don't really know how they want to use it. They don't know how they'll incorporate it into their marketing strategies, any of these kinds of things. And the reason you don't want to be collecting that now without a strategy for it is every additional piece of information you're asking for is another opportunity for your donor to say, this has taken too long, and they just bail from making the gift, right? So we want to reduce that possibility as much as possible. And then the other piece on the low-hanging fruit side really is largely following UX best practices that really apply to the broader, your entire digital experience, right? So make the page easy to read, right? Make sure that you've got bold colors and a lot of white space, and that things are easily scannable so that you can donors can see exactly what information is needed where. Make your buttons extremely clickable, so they will work on both mobile and desktop versions, right? Don't have little radio buttons that are hard to click on your phone or any of those kinds of things, which are huge turnoffs. And then really offering the other thing that can have a major driver for boosted conversion rates is offering multiple payment options. So not just having credit cards, not just having bank transfers and ACH, but really offering PayPal, Google, and Apple Pay, really trying to meet your donors where they are and make it as easy for them to convert as possible. So those are kind of the low hanging fruit pieces. Once we start to get into more of the like medium hanging fruit, the real bang for your buck comes in things like gentle nudges and social proof that you can offer to donors that are going to help either boost urgency or to kind of make it seem more like something that they're part of a community of donors, something that they're joining a movement to help support. So things like, we see this a lot with fundraising thermometers during a campaign, right? We're halfway to our goal, but we need another $50,000 by such and such a date. Or additional pieces like, you can see it on the form here on the left for Chesapeake Bay Foundation. I realize we're using a lot of Oyster content today, but you can see underneath the donate today or donate monthly buttons, there's a call out that specifically is asking people to make a monthly gift to be, to have even greater impact, right? So little nudges like that, or showing, dollar handles, what those things can do for a specific gift, or little things that can have, every little kind of touch point can boost your conversion rate a little bit, right? And you're going to be on this journey of trying to continually optimize and just make little nudges that will help over time to really boost overall conversion rate and kind of drive greater revenue and greater donor acquisition.
All right, we have a couple of full funnel tips that didn't really neatly fit into one of our stages of the funnel that we wanted to talk about too. So I have some bad news, which is that 50% of people will leave your website if your website is loading longer than 2 seconds. So 50% of people will leave if your website loads in 3 seconds compared to 2 seconds. People will leave your website if it is slow, and that is a bummer. That's a bummer if you put all the work into creating content and driving people to your website and your other channel strategy, and you've optimized your form, and then people just won't stick around to see it. The good news is that improving your page speed by even 1/10 of a second, which seems crazy, Deloitte and Google did a study that it would increase your conversions for e-commerce by 8%. So the thing with page load speed is that we're all very impatient and that we want it super fast, and that any small incremental changes that you make to that improve your page speed are going to be really good. So one of the things that would be good is a small takeaway. You can go and you can test your own website on pagespeed.web.dev. You can go and put in your URL and it will test your website. It'll analyze things like how long it takes for things to load above the fold, or how long does it take for an interaction. If you click on, add to cart, how long does it take for something to show up in your cart? And then, so it'll give you sort of like a grade and things that you can work on to improve this. If you want to make changes to this kind of stuff, you generally need a developer to help you with it. You need to be doing things like optimizing your caches, trimming down your JavaScript and your style sheets, using different CSS and HTML frameworks, and making sure you have a content delivery network and that it's optimized correctly. Something like Cloudflare is what we usually use. All right, Joe, but what do we do if we've done all these changes and we want to know, did any of them work?
Yeah, I've got some bad news too. So you're never going to get to a point where you have the perfect website or the perfect donation form where you can just really set it and forget it, right? We have to really approach these elements of design and engagement and cultivation as an ongoing journey of continuous improvement, right? And we always want to make sure that we're learning something at all times, really, in ways that will help to benefit your organization. And really the first step in that, and where a lot of folks sometimes struggle, is to create a very clearly defined set of goals or KPIs for your website or for your form or for your program. There's, a million things you could be measuring. There's a million KPIs that you could be tracking. Identifying the 3 to 5 KPIs that are really going to be the ones that you're measuring and that are really going to help define your program, and sticking with them as kind of the North Star on your journey is going to be incredibly helpful, because it'll just give you such a leg up in terms of being able to develop a strategy and then really to know whether or not that new strategy is working, right? So once you've kind of identified those KPIs, there's kind of the initial step of let's make sure we're actually tracking the information that we need to be able to identify those KPIs, right? And whether or not we're hitting those numbers. So some of that is, making sure that you've got reliable Google Analytics tracking set up, or whatever your digital analytics platform is, tracking pixels for various ad platforms, all these kinds of things. A lot of that often does require someone with some level of basic development skills also. So some of this, kind of the similar set of people that TJ was talking about in terms of page speed updates and those kinds of things. But really, once you've got those things in place, you can lean on the infrastructure that you've built to then build out a proper testing and optimization plan that, will kind of be your strategy for, the year, the kind of thing, right? So build it out as a calendar. Say, all right, we have these 3 KPIs. I have a couple of levers that I can pull to try and boost that number. Here's the sequencing that we're going to set it up in, right? And making sure that you have a clearly defined plan and calendar for each of these things so that you're really minimizing your downtime, right? So get a test up and launched, learn what you can from that test, assess your results, and then say, fantastic, we moved the needle a little bit, or that had no impact on the needle. What's our next test on the list? And get it up and running again, and just keep in this process of iteration that will over time get you closer and closer to that quote unquote perfect conversion. That bad news, you're never going to reach that final destination, but you will get, at each step you want to be making sure that you're learning more information so that you can make it better and better at every step in the process.
All right. Well, that was all of our quick wins. And so some of these wins, track to the funnel that we started in the beginning, and a couple of them were applied to the full funnel. So I hope that these quick wins that we shared will help you make a little bit more sense of your swiggle of the user journey that people are on and their relationship with you. It'll never be a perfectly straight line. We'll never have the perfect conversions, as Joe was saying. Joe, I thought you had a question. And but we can provide a little bit more form and framework to it. So that is the end. I have a question for the audience, actually. While Ashley and Joe and I were working on putting together this webinar, we had so much material that we had to sort of cut it in half. So we focused this webinar on quick term wins, as I hope you've noticed by now. And we have a whole other set of material for longer term wins to engage and convert donors. So I'm curious if people are interested in more on this that would be more longer terms. If you guys want to do, if you can raise your hand, isn't that right, Leah? Am I saying this right? Raise your hand.
Yes, yeah, there's a raise your hand
Zoom.
feature at the bottom. Yep. So it looks like we've got at least a couple of folks raising their hand. So for those of you who have raised your hand, would you mind using the chat feature to type in the topics that you'd be interested to go in more in depth on? Or the Q&A feature? Or you know what? It's a small group. If you guys want to chime in here, Elizabeth, I got your hand raised. What do you think? You're allowed. You should be able to talk now.
We don't mean to put people on the spot either. If you don't want to
You don't want to
share
talk,
over
no
audio,
worries.
that's totally fine too. So maybe we can go to questions too. Does anybody have any questions? All right, now I just made everyone raise their hand. Now you can put your hands down and raise your hand if you have a question. That was like a trick.
Yeah, I think it's all good. No worries. But yeah, so we're gonna move into an open some time of open questions. Like I said, if you've got a question or if you have an idea for another topic that you would like for us to explore in a future webinar, please feel free to convey that to us in whichever feature in this webinar platform that you feel most comfortable using. Let's see. What do we get into? What are some of the, without showing the slides, of the like examples, the quick ones that we walked through? Oh, here we go. You did. Oh, okay. No worries, Elizabeth. So of the quick wins that you shared, which ones do you think would kind of get the most bang for buck for nonprofits if they have to choose one?
Let me go back to our quick wins overview slide here.
Opinion is that it's gonna be the contextual information, again, call to action, making them relevant to the pages that they're already on, and then the donation form optimization. Because those are just very tangible and they're right almost at the point of sale. So if someone's really willing to click on it, then they're getting to that next, you know what I mean? They've got the intent already. They're further along in the funnel.
It's great.
And I think one thing about the contextual, making ask contextual and relevant is you don't have to do it for all pages of your website. You should look at your top
Right.
performing
Yeah.
pages, especially your top landing pages, and start
Mhm.
by optimizing those. So focus on, your top 20 pages and do those. There are
Mhm.
plenty of pages on your website that can have you use your generic calls to action, and that is totally fine.
That's right. Yep.
Joe, any disagreements on Ashley's?
No,
Like,
I was going to put in a plug for donation form optimization as the
Mm.
donation form optimization guy. So I'm glad that Ashley said it on my behalf for me.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools that you recommend for donation form optimization in case folks are wondering more about that?
Great question. So I think first and foremost, you need a tool like a Google Analytics in place and properly tracking, just so that you can even identify, where do we have issues, or are we tracking enough information that we can really do appropriate testing. Assuming that you've got that in place, there's a number of kind of A/B website testing tools that are out there that we've used with a bunch of clients. The one I've been using most recently is Visual Website Optimizer. It's called, or VWO, which is a fairly straightforward tool for being able to launch a side by side random testing of you have two different donation pages and you want half your traffic to go to one and half to go to the other. It's pretty straightforward there. It requires a little bit of development work and tracking and that kind of thing as well. So it's another one of those things where having a partner around or someone on staff who is kind of comfortable in that developer role, or comfortable in implementing some kind of code snippets on your pages and that kind of thing is super useful. But yeah, that's kind of the most recent one that I've been leveraging.
I think also, sorry, now we're coming up with 3 answers for Leah's question, but I think also changing your homepage hero, if you're using your homepage hero to talk about latest news, unless it is talking about how under the current climate, you really need to fundraise more, like your mission is even more critical, or you need more funds. I mean, I think you really should be using your homepage hero to talk about donations. And that's a pretty easy change that you can make to your website. Like, if the manager of your website manager should be able to make that change to your homepage hero.
Not actually, if I can go back a second too. Leah, you had asked obviously about testing, but I think there's a bunch of things that we've talked about here that you don't even need to be tested, right? Where we're talking about following UX best practices, right? So rolling out, making your form easy to click and read and do all these things. Don't bother testing that. Just do it, right? Like, if you can actually get it implemented and live, go ahead and do it. Monitor performance afterwards, but you don't really need a big testing tool to do side-by-side testing of those types of things. So a lot of that can be an even quicker win than just doing kind of side-by-side or random testing.
I think another feature that you mentioned, Joe, was around the different types of payment options. And again, I feel nowadays that's not necessarily something that needs to get tested, right? If you're already working with a tool for your form and they offer that as an option, they've done a lot of that due diligence to understand whether it's good or not to be featured, as well as you going through your own payment user experience and anything you're doing in your personal life. So I would say that those are just things that you could enable.
Yep.
And include on your forms.
All great stuff. Well, if there are no additional questions or thoughts, I know we've probably given folks a lot to think about. I think we can go ahead and wrap up there for today. Like we shared, there are some additional kind of longer term wins that we would love to share with folks in a future webinar. So stay tuned when we get that up and running and ready for promotion. We would love to see you again at that webinar at that time. TJ, if you could go flip to the ending slide, so we can make sure and leave people with a few there's anything. Yep. So you've got all the email addresses of the folks on today's webinar right there. We'll also be sharing out the slides and the recording in the email that's coming to you tomorrow, so you can review anything that you'd like to go more in depth on when you get those materials tomorrow. And thanks again for sharing your Thursday with us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, Elle.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.